Hi, I'm Shane.
And I'm Christy.
Welcome to the Food Drives the Mood podcast.
Food for your plate, food for your mind and soul, food for your body. Welcome to our show. Hi, everybody. We have with us today Rachel Yan. She's a functional medicine doctor from Precision and Power Health in Denver, Colorado, and she also practices online as well. So I'm going to hand it over to her and let her tell you a little bit about herself and what she does, both on like physical practice and then on online as well.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me on your podcast online, Christy and Shane. This is amazing. I love talking about food. I love talking about the impact of our daily decisions on what we bring into our mouths and how that impacts our bodies, our metabolism, our brain, our emotions, and therefore our life. So really, when we talk about eating well or eating healthily, it's not just about, doing the right thing or just having a good diet or being good today. It's really creating the future of how we feel in the next days to come. So this is great.
Awesome. I'm super excited. So we kind of told you a little bit about ourselves, and just to reiterate with whoever's listening, that we kind of come to you through like pillars in our business of food on our plate, food for our mind and soul, and food for our body. And so today we really want to focus on that, food for kind of our mind and soul and body, all of it kind of working as one. And we're talking today, and we're going to really ask Rachel like questions on the gut biome and the connection with our brain and how that works to our feelings of anxiety and just like like she said, our overall being and how we feel good or bad based on what we bring into our mouth. So what exactly does that mean when you hear like the brain and gut biome are connected?
The connection cannot be underestimated. And I think for most people that I talk to and from what's perpetuated, I think, in media and social media, is that food is really relegated only to calories, to your waistline, to your weight, and that's about it. And the exponential repercussions to how you eat, and then almost more importantly, how you digest that food, has such a profound impact on who you actually are. Because the tenets, the foundations of how we feel, the stress levels of which we see the world are very impacted by that baseline piece. And our bodies are amazingly adaptable. And unfortunately, what we find is that we've been able to adapt to this fast food culture, quick food culture, and instant food culture. And just because we can adapt to it does not mean that it's good for us. And the impact for that, I think, has contributed in some proportion in society and to the individual with feeling their energy go down. So having chronic fatigue or chronic energy, chronic exhaustion. And I'm hearing this from people that aren't, in their 30s or 40s or 50s. I'm hearing that from people in their teens and their 20s, people that are utterly exhausted. And it almost makes no sense, because it's not like they have, terrible life circumstances necessarily. It's not that they have a lot of trauma necessarily, but even if they have those things, they're being compounded. So it's made worse. So what they feel now and what they experience now is worse than it could be, because their fuel intake and their fuel processing is somehow messed up.
What kind of advice might you give somebody that's, that they're afraid to take that first step? Because almost like that fast food culture, quick food, it's a hard habit to break. It's almost, it's ingrained into who people are. And it seems like making that first step, I mean, we've heard so many excuses on why not to take that step, from finances to I'm too busy to my kid doesn't like this or doesn't like that. Is there anything, any bit of advice or maybe a statistic that might change someone's mind to, if they're on the fence, to go ahead and make that plunge?
The shift to eating better is more than one shift. And I think sometimes culturally we underestimate how difficult it can be. because not only do we have a culture that is set up to work longer hours, so our culture in the US is not set up to revolve around food or around health. It really isn't. It is set up around being productive, being busy, getting all the things done, being successful. And because of that, I think food can really fall by the wayside, whereas other countries still have cultures that revolve around food, where food is the central point of your friends and your family, and how you set up your evening, and just the pace of your life, the rhythm of your life. But food in the US is more like an afterthought, like we have to eat so we can keep going at the pace that we're used to. So by getting a patient to eat better is a multidimensional step, and it can't be underestimated. And I think the excuses that people have in certain ways are very valid, because to eat better means that probably you're going to have to acquire your food differently. And so that means where you shop is going to be differently, and that's rerouting a habit. And so a lot of these habits that we have are ingrained. It's the 95% of the brain that is on autopilot. It's like tying our shoes. It's like brushing our teeth. It's where we shop. It's the aisles we go down. It's what we grab. And so by eating better, we have to literally take habits out of the subconscious brain and pull them back into the conscious brain. And for most people that are underfed, undernourished, and overworked, this is a monumental task, because now it's like, oh, I've got to go find what to eat. And it feels stressful, because you're taking something from autopilot that just goes, and you're bringing it back into the conscious brain. All right, where do I shop? I've never gone to the store before. I've got to go to farmer's market. When does it open? It's only for this season. We have to go and learn new habits and create new neural pathways in order to do this. So in the beginning, it is hard. And I tell patients that it's okay if it feels hard, because you're literally creating a whole new activity level and rewiring this habit. So in the beginning, it's tough, because you've got to go to a new place. Then you've got to bring this food home that maybe you've never cooked before. And then now you've got potential failure on the horizon. And a lot of us don't have a very good relationship with failing, especially when it comes to having to feed our kids. And now they're going to not be happy. And our spouse is going to be like, what is this crap on the plate, right? There's so many aspects of feeling just general anxiety and stress and the potential failure. Whereas if you just order pizza, everyone's happy. And whatever body addictions and emotional addictions, neurochemical addictions we have to the food are fulfilled. So we're fighting our time constraints, what society has set up for us to do, maybe what we've learned from our parents. So there's a generational piece as well, which is very powerful. And to be able to break all these pieces is really, really tough. And plus, even if you created the best gourmet, healthy food dinner, you may not have the microbiome set up in your gut or in your family's gut to be able to process it. So it could actually feel not good at first to eat that way. So everything could feel bad at first.
So then what would be the first step that they would do, is like instead of doing it all at once and feeling that overwhelm of having to go to, we live in a small town, so we don't really have like different stores. So one store is all stores, but is shopping in the different aisles is also like difference. Like, you know, we always say like try to go that outside edge. So what would be like one thing, like adding vegetables or taking away blah, 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 or something, so that they could do like in little baby steps?
I think the first thing is that I like to create what I call the safety net, the nutritionally dense safety net first. Because when we think about the food that we're eating and the things that aren't serving us, or the things that we consider to be unhealthy, the easier thing first is just to be like, I've got to stop eating sugar, or I've got to stop drinking so much coffee. And we go and we try to eliminate something first. And honestly, that's the hard approach. And depending on how addicted your body is to those foods or those substances from being underfed or malnourished or not being fed nutrient dense food, what happens is that creates all in itself, even though the end result is good. So going off of sugar or having less caffeine, the end result is good. But in that process, because it's so fast or so dramatic, it can cause trauma. And anything that the body perceives as stress or too much stress in my book is no longer good. I used to be a big advocate of just eliminate all the bad stuff, just do it, have the willpower to do it. But when you use willpower as a driving force to push the agenda that we have, even if it's a very good agenda, can still be interpreted as stress, because why is your body addicted to sugar? Probably because it's got poor blood sugar regulation, probably because you're not getting enough good proteins and good fats. And so it's become addicted because that's all it has. So to only remove that piece, now your body's going to go into, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And we never want that biochemistry to feel that way. So I'm not a big fan of using willpower alone. We have to have a strong will and emotional intelligence to navigate that. But willpower by itself overrides the body's biochemistry, and the biochemistry of, am I going to survive? Am I going to die? Am I going to procreate? Those are just the baseline tenets. So if we ever make the body's biochemistry feel like we're going to die, it's not worth it. So back to your question, the first step is to create that underlying safety net. Let's first put in the nutrient dense foods first, and let's get you absorbing it and digesting it a little bit better. And then as a secondary step, watch the caffeine fall away. Watch the sugar fall away with conscious effort and looking at what needs to move. But once that's in place, then it's a lot more easeful, and it doesn't have that trauma associated with it, so that we also don't associate being healthier with trauma, which for a lot of people, that's the link. Like, okay, if I'm going to be healthier, then I can't have all the things that make me happy, and I've got to have this very Spartan kind of diet, and then now I'm sad. Right? And we take the pleasure out of being healthy, and that's not sustainable at all.
Right. So then if you're like, essentially, if you're full of good food, then you won't want the things that are not good, or the sugar, the caffeine, and that kind of stuff.
I can see that for sure being a, I guess a physical reaction, as far as your body might stop telling you you want that as bad. But what about the mental or emotional attachment people have from eating their low quality food, their go-to Twinkie, their super sugary coffee? So it seems like there's more to it than just like fill them up with good stuff and they're going to stop wanting the bad.
Right. There's the huge emotional component. And this is when I start to go into talking about generational issues that are passed down. So whenever I have parents that talk about, like, my kid won't eat the thing, then I say, well, did you eat the thing when you were pregnant with them? Did you eat the thing before they were born? Did you eat the thing when they were kids? Like, what's the lead up to your kid not wanting that thing, right? Whether it's vegetables or proper protein. And so there's such an emotional component that's passed down. And I think in certain cultures and certain countries, the lineage of food and the lineage of nutritionally healthy food is stronger. Whereas maybe in countries like the US, we've been in a certain way that melting pot of cultures, which on one part is beautiful and it's diverse, but also a lot of us kind of get diluted in terms of our cultural food. And so instead of having the foods that have nourished our people for a long time and generations, and we still eat that way, now fast food is more popular, because that's one of the reasons why the melting pot is maybe not good. We've just combined this whole thing, and now we just all can eat the standard American diet. And the emotional component is huge too, because I remember when I was young, I had a lot of birthdays, very memorable birthdays, 5-year-old birthdays, 6-year-old birthdays at McDonald's. And so for me, McDonald's as just a place has an emotional component. And even after I stopped eating McDonald's, and it had been years, I would still look at it when I drove down the street. Even though I had no body desire, I knew I'd feel pretty sick if I went in and I had whatever I wanted. I wanted it, like my heart wanted it, because it was a happy place, right? And so part of it is when we eat healthier, there's certain generational things that we might have to break. And that's hard because maybe our parents knew better. Maybe they didn't know better. Maybe they didn't have the resourcing. Maybe they did and they weren't strong enough. Maybe they did and we whined too much as children and they just gave in to us. They wanted to make us happy. So when we break these generational issues, we break it not only for our children, so that they have a better way of approaching food, a better emotionality of approaching food. And we can pass down a stronger decision-making and mental state around food. But we're also breaking it upstream too for our parents that maybe didn't know or didn't do it. We break it for everyone, and then we break it for people that were around. And so the power is a huge ripple effect. When we eat better, it's an energetic cycle that goes both directions, up and down the generational line, and we break it for people that were around. We break it energetically in society. It's a powerful thing when you start to stand up for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think we actually feel that in through our journey, because we raised our kids, a lot of drive-through McDonald's, a lot of chicken nuggets, a lot of those frozen little dinners. They were pretty nasty, but the kids loved them. But you just throw them in the microwave, and then they'd smear it on their face and eat a bite or two and be full, right? And so then when we started eating different, like, oh gosh, we got to go eat the hippie food. And so it's been a little bit of pushback, but now they're college age. Like our shift kind of started when they were all pretty much still in high school, kind of the last part of their high school. So they kind of like, this is kind of weird. And so we'd do 2 tracks. We'd have, the same old stuff that we always serve the kids. And then we'd have our hippie food. But over time, they're starting to enjoy and adapt that, maybe I got to give this stuff a try. And now they enjoy eating with us. And some of them are starting to learn how to, as they're branching out on their own, they're learning how and asking, hey, how do you make this? Or how do you do that? And then on the other side of the coin, the parents aren't there all the way, but they're starting to ask questions. So what about this? Or how do you go about that? So that's pretty a cute statement just based on our own life.
Yeah, totally. I love that.
We do like a Friday night pizza night, and like I do like cauliflower crust pizza and veggies and all this stuff on it. And one of our kids moved back into our house, and I was like, it's Friday night pizza night, and he's like, we're not ordering Pizza Hut, and it's like my favorite night. Like I can make these pizzas, like they're gourmet, beautiful, great. And he would make fun of me, and now he's like, okay, this is one of my favorite nights. Like he loves those pizzas and does it. And so, and then my son that's like has celiac, I always tell him, because we used to go to Burger King and McDonald's all the time. And I'm like, I feel so bad, like now knowing I was literally feeding you poison, and it even more compounded with him. But we haven't been to McDonald's or any of those things in years and years, but I get it. Like so many birthday parties, and we live in a small town, and we same kind of weather. Oh, you guys get more snow, but it has a play area that's inside too, and you can go like play in those bouncy balls and get a $3 Happy Meal.
Disgusting bouncy ball things. Yeah.
Oh.
But we put our kids in there. So, but I guess kind of something that I find is, I guess positive is that you can kind of unbreak things to a degree, because for a while I felt like as I learned more and started to change my ways, I had a certain amount of guilt. Like, crud, I blew it. I kind of wrecked my kids by the way I was feeding them, because I was eating the same way, and it was kind of an extension of how my parents fed us. But the damage can be undone, I'm finding. And it's kind of back to like there's always like I don't think any parent does it on purpose, right? You kind of do what you know best. So I remember one of the rules before leaving my table is eat everything on your plate. And I think now, man, how much to the obesity crisis did that philosophy call? But our parents were following what their parents, being products of the Depression. I mean, so there's generational and cultural things that add to kind of the state we're in, but I do believe it is repairable.
Yeah. And, to all the parents that are listening to this and feeling a level of guilt, either presently or in the past, we knew what we knew, and we did what we did, and we did the best that we could, given all the circumstances and our energy levels and how much we had to work, and really desiring for our kids to be happy. We just did the best that we could. And so you let that go. And then today is the only day that you can make difference for the future. Right. So we focus on today. There we go.
Yeah, it makes me think, what are we doing now that we're going to find out it was totally silly 20 years from now? Just live and try to evolve, right?
And how, like, I guess for I don't want to say quick and easy, but I know like in my classroom with my students, a lot of times they're, they'll bring in some food and I like let them eat because I think that it's okay to eat, but I have changed my what can be in my classroom sort of thing. So I don't want like the heavily processed foods and that kind of thing. I try and talk to them about that. So they'll ask like, can we have these Cheez-Its? Like they're cheese. Is that okay? But then we'll read the labels and we'll talk about it. So then they have kind of asked like, okay, so what is good food? Like if I'm feeling this way, or if they are tired, and they may say that, or they are having those anxiety pieces. And this isn't just for students, but I work with them daily, so I see this. But what can they start to add maybe as teenagers, or even like parents that are on that fast track and they have to go to this ball game and that, and so they're going through the fast food lines and whatnot, but they want to make those small changes. Are there things that they can add to their diet? Like, are blueberries fantastic? Do you know what I mean? Like that they can start to even use those foods that, like you said, like to kind of fill them up and give them the good energy. Like what are some of those things that they can almost grab and go to start to kind of balance it in a different way, like take it to another level? I don't know.
I love this question. And I'm going to approach it from a functional medicine doctor perspective, and then from a perspective of a human. And so we'll see if you guys get the answer that you want. So from a functional medicine perspective, we're very focused on what does the body actually need, and letting the condition the body has drive the diet choices. So from a high level up, what that means is if there's a certain condition that's going on in the gut that's preventing you from digesting your food properly, or turning your food into maybe a bad thing. So a classic example of that are, I work with a lot of gut issue patients. And so people come in with things like constipation or diarrhea back and forth, heartburn, bloating, gas. They just don't feel good when they eat. And whenever you have these symptoms, all that means is whatever you're eating is not going well. The end of story. For whatever reason, it's just not going well. And for some people, it's going to come down to they're eating the wrong kinds of foods. And the wrong kinds of foods is a very broad thing. It could be from the person who's eating McDonald's every day and they know it's probably not a good idea, all the way to someone who is eating maybe too many vegetables and they have a bacterial overgrowth in their stomach. And the vegetables, because of the condition in their gut and the infection that they are harboring in their gut, are really being turned into not a good thing. And it's causing a massive amount of bloating and a massive amount of discomfort. And literally, the more vegetables they eat, the more uncomfortable they get and the worse their condition gets, right? And so that poor choice of food is a very wide spectrum. So in functional medicine, we're very obsessed with what does your body need for what condition it has right now. And there's a wide range of individuality for that. And I like to mention that even on like a podcast that's centered on food, because oftentimes the obsession is, okay, what should I eat? What should I not eat? And food is very fatty in the US in terms of suddenly, cucumbers are good and then they're not. And then eggs are good and they're not. Like it really swings powerfully in either direction. But what should drive it first is knowledge as to what your body needs. And that's condition-based healthcare. And so many of us don't get help until we're so bad off that we can't function anymore. We can't get out of bed. We're so exhausted. Our hair is falling out. Our skin is just flaking off our face. We wait until it gets that bad. And so people that are listening to your podcast and people that you're reaching out to, they want their optimal health. And so food really needs to be tailored to what you have going on. And for most people, that requires a little more information. So that's the functional medicine answer. Now, as a human, what I would say first is when we're talking about exhaustion and energy and food choices, most of us, at least as adults, so maybe children is a little bit different now with how we're raised on the fast food culture and the quick food culture. But if you're an adult, you probably have a sense of what's healthy and what's not. Which means if you're an adult and you're listening to this podcast, you probably know that McDonald's every day is not good. Probably even every other day, once a week is not good. And there's probably a certain amount of guilt, shame, and just like, I hope no one sees me here when you're driving through the drive-through and getting your McDonald's. And so as a human level, the first thing I work with a client or a patient is not a whole food chart, because then it's just eat this, don't eat this. And it just becomes like a, either do what I say or don't do what I say. The first thing that has to be met before we go into specific food is what I call food congruency. This means if you know you should do something, do it. That's it. So if you know you should drink more water and you're not, drink the water. If you know you shouldn't be eating McDonald's as often as you are, don't do it. And that level of meeting what you know and doing what you should do removes a huge amount of stress off the body right away. It's doing what you know you should do. And it's honoring your word. It's respecting your word. Otherwise, a person will never get well. I don't care what kind of amazing diet they're on and what kind of supplements they're adding in, what kind of health program you're on. If you don't honor your word to your own body, and that you want to do something, you're going to finally do it, you've committed to it, and then you break your word to your own body, what's your body going to do for you? Nothing. It's not going to get healthier for you. It's not going to show up for you when you need more energy. It's not going to step up to the plate because you're not stepping up to the plate for it.
Right. They have to want it.
They have to want it. So you've got to want it and you have to do it.
Yeah, want it, and really want it too, because we've had situations talking with people where they act like they want it, but then they simply won't. For whatever reason, it's too hard. It's not really worth it to them, and so they like it all laid out. But when the rubber hits the road, even though when they're striving for that continuity that you're speaking with, or congruity, it almost is. It hurts them, because then they've caused this another level of stress and guilt, and like, oh, I know I shouldn't have that, blah blah, but I'm gonna have 6. Oh crap! Now I've eaten it. Now I've lost. So we said, no, it's like start, like, if you fall down, just start fresh. Just like boom, put that behind you. But that's hard for people to do at some aspects. Is just to truly commit and then and give it a shot. So that's something that I don't know. We haven't gotten figured out as people that want to help others be successful, is how to let them know that, if, like you said, if they know they should do, but even if they choose to do what they're intuitively know they shouldn't, as part of the process. The cliche, fall down 7, get up 8. It really holds true in this journey for a lot of people. But that getting up the last time sometimes is difficult.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, it's funny that you said like the foods, kind of the good food, even it might not be what your body needs. And it's funny because I love like vegetables and we eat really, really healthy, but I was even eating like an over amount of spinach. And like I spinach all the time, and my stomach was starting to get like, I would hurt and this and that. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm doing everything right. I'm eating like all these greens and blah, blah, blah. And I started like experimenting with how much spinach I was eating, and found that like my body doesn't like it. Like I can just take a little bit at a time here and there, but as much as I was eating, like it was not good for me. And same thing, like he loves like, or can do it differently than I can, but I love yogurt too. And I was eating like Greek yogurt, and again, I'm bloated like super quick. And so I love it, but I can only have little bits and pieces. And I guess I can feel it in my body differently than other people too, because we're so clean at what we eat in a sense, so we can kind of see it. I feel like when we first started this journey 3, 4, 5 years ago, and we were eating McDonald's all the time, I don't know that I would have like said, oh yeah, spinach gives me this stomach ache or whatever. I would have blamed it on something different. So
I was pretty happy too when she got off the spinach kick, because there for a while everything had a green hue to it. A little bit green. Oh, you put spinach in there, didn't you?
I like spinach, but yeah, so that part is really kind of crazy. So I do want to leave, we're almost to the end unless you have some other stuff to say, but I really would like to know, like we kind of talked about the gut biome and how it's connected with the brain. And I guess like some last words on those things that we eat and or do, I don't know, for our mind, body, stomach, all the connections, like what are some tangible things that our listeners can like walk away with and begin to do to kind of like build more positive aspects, like if they're feeling anxiety or stressed, just in general, like what are some things that they can like walk away from this podcast and have in their hand to be like, I'm going to try this to make those two things work together better?
Yeah. You know, I think a thing in our society is that we want to feel good all the time. Maybe it's the modern life lie that we should be happy and feel fulfilled and successful
Right.
and gorgeous all the time. And while those are all very good desires, we also, on the other spectrum, we have feelings that don't feel so good. And we tend to want to avoid those at all costs, whether it's a feeling of sadness, anxiety, depression, anger, rejection, frustration. All of these are things that we tend to avoid at all costs. And I find for a lot of my patients that the issue with their food isn't so much that they have a food addiction or they have no self-control. The issue is more that they don't really understand the range of emotions that we have as humans, and that really at the end of the day, it's really okay to feel them.
Right.
It's okay to feel them, and there's no bad emotions. They're just bad feeling emotions, but they're not bad, and it's okay to feel them. And I think especially for at the filming of this podcast, we're going through COVID right now, and there's a lot of stuff going up there, and everyone is impacted by this in some way.
Right.
And they're feeling all kinds of things from it. And our society can, just like with food and how fast food can be, our society is also set up in a way that can help us try to drown out the feelings very quickly. So to move on from feeling bad, let's go here and feel better, or let's go here and experience this. So much of life and food is marketed to us in a way to get us to feel better instantly. Just look at a commercial for a soda, right? It's all about feeling good.
Right.
So on the as a more core piece of food excellence and choosing good food and eating better is to really be keen with your emotions, because your emotions, even if they're good feeling emotions or negative feeling emotions, we are meant to feel them because we're humans. And that's part of the brilliance of being human, is feeling all those things. And if we can just give ourselves permission to feel those things, then the desire to cover it up or to chase it away with food is a very common one. That goes away a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we just give ourselves permission to feel like, sometimes I'm going to feel anxious, maybe for no reason at all, but that's an okay human emotion. But what is that emotion giving me? What is it pointing out to me? What in my life maybe gets to shift a little bit? What does that shine a light on in terms of something that is working for me, or maybe is not working for me? And when we become a little more keen and available, and it's okay to feel these things, we don't judge ourselves for feeling them, then we can almost corner it down a little bit. We can distill it down a little bit more, and we can focus on that instead of trying to fix it, repair it, recover it.
I love that. Feel the feelings. Like it really is good. And like, no, like you can also question yourself. Like, I'm feeling anxious because of this. Is it true? No, it's not. Or yes, it is. And so how can I change it so that I don't feel this feeling anymore? What can I do differently? And, in light of this feeling that I'm having. So
yeah,
I like
for sure. That question where they're coming from, why they're coming from, and realize that it might not be a quick fix. There might not be something that can happen quick, but it's something that you have more internal control than you might realize.
And it's okay to feel it.
Yeah. It's okay to feel it. Yeah. And so once we start to get people a little more emotionally intelligent in terms of being able to give themselves allowance and availability to feel these things, even if they're negative, and to not then make a feeling about that. So I'm feeling anxious. Oh my gosh, I'm so guilty about feeling, I shouldn't feel anxious. My life is so good. Why do I feel this way? So we've got that guilt on top of that. Now we're like, getting more anxiety about feeling that guilt, because what does it mean about me? And then we start to compound that emotion. When that starts to roll downhill, then we try to salve it with food oftentimes. Right. And so that's kind of the bottom piece with food. It's like, yeah, we all probably know something that we could do better when it comes to our diet, to eat better, to choose better, to not do this, to not do that, to not go here, to not drink that. We all have that list, but then it's not just like not doing it. Just don't eat it. It's not that easy. What emotions are behind that? What patterns is it covering up? What growth that you have in your personal life are you drowning out with that thing? And if you just pursue the underneath piece first, then the food gets easier, because you don't need to cover it up. You don't need to use the food to drown it out. You don't need to use it as some kind of a addictive recovery method. And then now your life changes and you're in a different place, and your need for that food changes, and then your whole life gets better. So food in that way is really, is it medicine, or is it an addiction? Is it helping you, or is it covering something? I think that's why, gosh, like your podcast is just, it's so serving. Like people need to hear this.
Right. I love that. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insight and giving us some of your time and expertise. Very, very nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Of course. Good to meet you guys too.
Thank you very much. So thanks for doing this.
Of course.
Thanks. Where can people find you?
I'm online. My website is precisionempoweredhealth.com. I am also on Facebook. You can find me under Rachel Yan. I am on Instagram, Dr. Rachel Yan. So I am quite online.
Awesome. And I will put it in the show notes when we have it out there as well. So I'll have those links for you as well. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.